Hello, it's Alex, the Booktubers. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in January, and I read 8 books in total and they were all 4-star reads, so that's a pretty good way to start the year off. There was actually a 9th book that I started but I did not finish it, so that wasn't a 4-star read obviously, but other than that it was a really good reading month. So first up I read Dark Matter by Michelle Paver, and this is a ghost story set on an Arctic expedition. It is set in the 1930s and we're following a character called Jack who, if I remember correctly, is in his 20s and isn't loving his life. He's had some hardships that he's been through, and he really wants to get away from his job and do something that actually means something to him. And he ends up meeting this group of guys who are putting an expedition together, and he joins them in order to help out, and yeah, the story goes from there. And this one was excellent. It's my first time reading this author and I would definitely read more by her. We really get to know this character Jack, and it's mostly told through diary entries from him, and I really liked that format. And yeah, the story goes on as the expedition is underway, and as you can probably imagine, things don't go super smoothly, some things go wrong, and yeah, we watch all of that play out without going into specifics. The group dynamic is really interesting as well, because not only is Jack an outsider from the others in the sense of not being part of their friend group, but he's also from a lower class than them. They're all wealthy people and have been friends, you know, forever. So there's an interesting dynamic there within this group of people, and how Jack deals with that. And even though he wants to be a part of it, he kind of resents them on the one hand, and he feels like he has something to prove to them, so he also kind of wants to fit in. So yeah, I really liked that aspect of it. And yeah, as we go along there are some creepy things that happen which I thought were really well done. The setting was excellent. I could really imagine the things that were happening on their journey, and then the cabin where they're going to be staying and the surrounding landscape. Yeah, I thought it was all really well written and very immersive, and of course the cold weather really added to the feel of the whole story. And before I forget, there are a couple of moments of animal harm, and from what I remember they are very brief, but they are pretty nasty. So yeah, I can't imagine anyone wants to read that stuff. I certainly don't enjoy it, but I know some people might want to avoid that completely, so just a heads up for that. And as the story progresses, the area that they're staying in goes through a period of prolonged darkness, like basically the sun doesn't even come up any time of day. So seeing how Jack dealt with that kind of environment was really well done, and how that affected things. And yeah, hard to say too much more without getting into spoilers, but I thought this one was great. A really quick and immersive read, and perfect for the winter season. Yeah, it was quite emotional as well. Like there were definitely a couple of points where yeah, things got a bit emotional, and I just really enjoyed the fact that it was a supernatural story in a setting that I hadn't read that combination before, so that was really cool. Yeah, so 4 stars to Dark Matter by Michelle Paver. Definitely recommend that one. Next up I read Maynard's House by Herman Raucher. This is about a character called Austin. He is a Vietnam vet, and one of the guys he was over there with basically willed him his house should he die, which he did. So on his return to the US, he travels out to find this house, which is in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in Maine, and it's very snowy and cold. So again, I had picked this specifically to read in the winter season, and yeah, I'm very glad I did. And basically, yeah, some strange things happen in this house, and there is a tree nearby that the locals call Witch's Tree, and so there's a whole history and kind of urban legend, local legend surrounding that. And there are also these two locals, a boy and a girl, who he encounters on multiple occasions, and there's, yeah, some kind of odd things going on there. And yeah, this was different to what I expected. I guess I expected more of just a, you know, some kind of haunted house story maybe, and it's really not that. It does have a couple of instances that are maybe more your classic haunted house type of goings on, but it was very different from that as well, and I really liked it because of that, actually. There's also a lot of humour in here, which I was not expecting at all. Not necessarily like, it's not a comedy, but there's a lot of humour and it worked really well for the story. So yeah, that was unexpected, but really enjoyable and really well done. I did really enjoy his writing style. So throughout the story, we get to know a bit more about Austin and his background, and also his experiences in Vietnam, and then his relationship with Maynard, and then also him getting to grips with this kind of odd house and the remoteness of where he is now living, and the strange things that start to happen around there. So there's definitely a strong psychological element to the story, and following Austin's kind of mental state while he is in this location. So yeah, this was definitely a bit different to what I was expecting, but that's not a bad thing. It was a really excellent read, and again, yeah, the snowy setting was perfect for reading during the winter time, and yeah, it was just such a unique story, I think, and the way things played out, like I really just had no idea what was happening next and how this story was going to end. So yeah, there was a lot of reasons that it surprised me, and in a really good way. So yeah, if you're looking for a bit of a different kind of part supernatural, part psychological story, then I recommend this one. Next up, I read Goth by Otsuichi, and the majority of this was translated by Andrew Cunningham, and then there's like a final story which was translated by Jocelyn Allen. And all I really knew about this one was that it is about two students and they're both obsessed with true crime cases. But other than that, yeah, I didn't really know much, and also the title Goth kind of led me to believe it was maybe going to be somewhat gothy, which, I mean, it is in a very tiny way. But what I wasn't expecting with this one, I thought it was just a standard novel, but it's actually told more in short stories, but they do follow the same characters, so they do intertwine even if they don't necessarily like follow on from one another in, you know, one flowing through story. And so we have these two characters who, yeah, they're not necessarily friends, but they're both maybe think of themselves or are treated as kind of the weirdos at school, and so they have come together because of that, and through that they both have found out that they are obsessed with crime cases, and yeah, they do seem to stumble upon quite a few going on in their area. So as long as you can get over the idea of so many weird criminal acts going on in their vicinity, then yeah, you can still have a good time with it. It did take me a couple of stories to get into this, and I think one of the kind of negatives for me was that it did get a bit repetitive at times. Like, we're told about the relationship between these two characters, a guy and a girl, multiple times, and it's like, yeah, I already know that. Why are you telling me again? Other than that though, it was really great, and I really enjoyed the writing style. It's quite kind of detached in a sense and kind of has a bit of a coldness to it, but I really liked it. And yeah, the cases that they end up having some involvement with, some of them are a bit strange, some of them are really brutal, but yeah, all of them interesting. Some of them involve one or both of them directly, but some of them are just ones that they kind of stumble upon in their area. Some of the stories are told from the male character's perspective, but then we do also get some stories where we're following other characters aside from these main two people, so completely different characters and yeah, the crimes that they are committing. So I really liked the style of this one once I'd gotten into it, I think, and I think some of the stories were better than others, but overall it was really, really good. I really liked, yeah, the vibe of it, and yeah, just some like really odd things that yeah, these characters have done. And not only that, but the way that these two characters deal with finding out about these crimes and these particular murderers. They don't necessarily want to put a stop to it. They are just happy being observers. So yeah, again, that was really interesting and really well done. I will say, I think it was the final story in like the main part of the book that I found a bit confusing towards the end. So if you've read it, you'll have to let me know if it made sense to you. But aside from that, yeah, it was great. And then there is an afterword from the author, and he does explain that he kind of apologises for using the title Goth, because I think he just wanted to use the word, even though it's not necessarily a big part of the story. The female character is described as having like a goth look, but there's not really any more to the book than that. So don't go into this one expecting anything really about goths or goth subculture or anything like that, because yeah, that's not what it's about. And then after the afterword there is another story, and that one was great as well. So yeah, really glad I picked this one up. So if you like true crime, or at least fictional true crime, then yeah, definitely recommend this one. Next up, I read a bit of vintage YA. I recently bought a bunch of the Twilight Where Darkness Begins series, which came out in the 1980s, and I have yet to share them in a book haul, but hopefully that will be coming one of these days. And I ended up picking up The Twisted Room by Janet Patton Smith. So this is the first of the Twilight series that I've read, and it was a great one to start with because I really enjoyed it. This is about a teenage girl called Lisa. She is sent off to live with her aunt because her parents are going through a kind of rocky separation, and her aunt is a bit strange and not particularly welcoming, and they kind of live in a somewhat remote area, so there's not a ton for Lisa to do, but she ends up seeing this nearby house and another teenage girl living in it, and they have a conversation, but things seem a little off with this other girl, and so we find out fairly early on that this other girl is in like a different time period to Lisa, and yeah, there might be something supernatural going on there, and Lisa has to figure out what's going on. But she becomes caught up in this story, and she also finds out that this house, there was a fire there some time ago, and yeah, that plays a big part in the story. So yeah, without going too further into details, I just really liked this one. I really enjoyed her writing style, and yeah, there were definitely some elements to the story that I thought were pretty unique and interesting. And then yeah, things do get a little crazy towards the end, which I really appreciated and yeah, wasn't necessarily expecting. So yeah, I thought this was a good one, and definitely makes me want to pick up more of the Twilight series when I get a chance. Next up, I read Psycho by Robert Bloch, the classic, which I hadn't read until now, and I was wanting to pick this up anyway, but I saw that Jose over at Haunted Cruise had picked this book as his book club's choice for the month of January, so I jumped on that to join in, and of course I will leave a link to his channel, so definitely go check him out if you haven't already. And I mean, what can you really say about Psycho? It's such a famous story that even if you haven't read the book or seen the Hitchcock film adaptation or the remake — I haven't seen the remake, I wasn't too interested, but they're such a big part, I think, of popular culture that it's hard to not have stumbled upon some of the like iconic moments in the story, and how things play out and like the big twists of the story. So I won't mention them just in case you haven't heard of them, but this is essentially about a character called Norman. He and his mother run a motel, but there has been like a new highway that's been built, which has taken a lot of their business away from them. So they're pretty quiet and off the beaten path. And Norman's mother generally kind of keeps herself to herself up at the house, whereas Norman runs the motel. And we follow another character called Mary, who has decided to steal some money from the place where she works and go on the run and meet up with this guy that she's been seeing and kind of pay off his debts, and then they can get married and live happily ever after. But yeah, she comes through to the motel while she's on her journey and meets Norman. He gives her a room, and then some things happen without giving any spoilers, I guess. So yeah, this was a really interesting one and I really enjoyed it. It's a pretty short read. I got through it in like just a couple of days, and I really liked his writing. It's pretty to the point, but definitely has a good way with words, with some of the things that play out to really give that tension and surprise, and some kind of brutal things that play out. So that was great. Getting into the mind of Norman as well was really interesting, and he is somewhat different to the Hitchcock version, so I liked seeing those differences. I think they're both, very well done characters in their own ways. Even though I'd already seen the film and knew how the story played out and I knew the big twists, big reveals, I thought reading the book was not going to live up to that, but even though I knew what was going to happen, I still found it really gripping and really enjoyable. So yeah, that's got to be a testament to the book there. Really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend it if you haven't picked it up. Whether you've seen the film or not, I would absolutely recommend it. It's a really great and well written book in my opinion. I feel like some people, it seems to have kind of fallen short from their expectations, but I thought it was awesome. Really enjoyed it. And I still thought the reveals, as certain things play out, were still kind of shocking in the moment as you're reading them, even though I knew it was going to happen. So that was really cool. Next up, I read Mother's Boys by Bernard Taylor. I really enjoy his work, and it's been a while since I've read any of his books. I've been kind of trying to ration them because I don't have many left to read now. But yeah, I'm really glad I picked this one up because I really enjoyed it. And funnily enough, it just happened that I read this back to back with Psycho, and so yeah, they both have a kind of Mother's Boys type of theme to them, which was coincidental timing wise. This is about Robert and Judith. They were married and they have 4 children, and they actually split up a few years ago. Judith decided she just wanted to do something else with her life, and so she went off to do her own thing, leaving Robert with the kids. And 3 years later, she all of a sudden has changed her mind and wants to come back into their lives. And the oldest boy, Kester, I think he's in his early teens. He is very close with his mother still. They have had, you know, visits on weekends and stuff to see her, and he is very much still close with her, as the next brother down from Kester, I forget his name, but they're pretty close with Judith. Like, they even call her Jude, they don't call her mum or anything. And then the two younger kids, there's a boy and a girl, they are kind of a bit neglected by Jude, and she still claims that she loves them just as much, but there's a very obvious, you know, difference in the way she treats the children. And Robert, the father, is, yeah, dealing with having Jude go off doing her own thing, and now all of a sudden, you know, she wants to come back into their lives, and he's like, I've already moved on, lady, like, you made your mind up, you can't just waltz back in here and expect us to go back to playing happy families. But she comes across as very narcissistic, and nothing could ever be her fault, it's always someone else's, and also everything has to go her way, else life is so unfair. So yeah, she was a very annoying character, but still interesting to read about. And this is another one, before I forget, that has some animal cruelty. I think it even opens on a scene of Kester and his brother doing something awful to poor little animals. So yeah, heads up for that. I think it definitely helps set the scene and get into the mind of these kids and how awful they are. And so there's this, yeah, complex relationship with Jude wanting to come back into their lives, Robert wanting to keep things as they are and keep the distance, and also Robert has been dating another lady for some time and is thinking of, you know, wanting to marry her and have her become, you know, kind of a permanent member of their family. Of course, Jude is not super happy about that, and yeah, anyway, this one, I thought it was going to go one way, but it kind of goes in a slightly different direction to what I was expecting, so I don't want to say what that is and spoil it for you if you are wanting to read it yourself. But I really liked this one. It's maybe more of a kind of a domestic thriller slash horror, because it does have some pretty kind of brutal moments and some shocking things that play out, especially towards the end, that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, it does get a bit violent at times. I don't think that would be too spoilery to say for a horror novel. Yeah, a really well crafted story. Really liked this one. And reading about these kids, especially Kester, who you can kind of feel how he's been warped by his mother into his way of thinking, and how he treats other people and how he treats her. And he's very loyal to her, so he would, you know, do anything for her, and how she has cultivated that. And yeah, he sees her coming back into the family as what should happen, and he is willing to do what he feels he has to do to make that happen, should anyone get in his way. I really thought this one was excellent. I really enjoy his writing. He does his characters really well, especially families and children. I think he does an excellent job with them, making them really believable. And yeah, this was kind of, yeah, like I say, it had a couple of kind of shocking moments, some things that play out that I wasn't quite expecting. So that was really good. And I also really liked the ending. Obviously I won't say what happens, but I thought that was, yeah, pretty great. So yeah, this was another 4-star read for me. Another excellent Bernard Taylor novel that I would recommend. And I do believe this is being reissued by Valancourt. I'm not sure when that is, but yeah, whether you track down a secondhand edition or wait for the reissue, yeah, highly recommend this one. And after reading the book, I watched the film adaptation, which was an early 90s affair starring Jamie Lee Curtis and that guy with the eyebrows. And yeah, this wasn't so good, unfortunately. The film only takes like the very basic of the story in that, yeah, we have this family where the mother has kind of gone off to do her own thing and now she wants to come back into the family. The rest of the story is very different. Yeah, it was just your kind of typical early 90s thriller type of affair. I mean, it was fine, you know, but it wasn't great, and it definitely wasn't nearly as good as the book. I also started reading Such a Pretty Smile by Kristi DeMeester. This was a new release in January and I got a copy through NetGalley, and this is the book I DNF'd. I got like 30% in and honestly just wasn't really feeling it. It just wasn't really doing anything for me. And you know, I have so many other books that I want to read that I don't really want to waste my time on something that I'm not into. So I gave it a chance. It starts off about, I think she's 12 or 13, a character who has kind of, I think, been a bit of an outsider at school until she's been kind of brought under the wing of a popular girl. And so, yeah, she still doesn't feel like she fits in, but, you know, she's, yeah, very obsessed with her friend. And in the area they live, there have been some brutal murders of young girls. So the main character's mother is very protective of her and doesn't want her going out at night or anything, and always wants to keep tabs on her. Whereas, yeah, the main character just wants to be able to do her own thing. And the first chunk of the book is told from her perspective, and it was fine, but I just wasn't really like grabbed by the story at any point. And then at some point we do switch over to the mother's perspective, and so we start to learn a bit more about her backstory and her past. I think I did get a little bit more interested when I started reading the mother's point of view, but by that point I was already like 30% in and I'm just like, I don't know if I really care to find out. Like, I hate to say a book was boring, but this one just, it wasn't doing anything for me. So I decided to DNF it. So yeah, it seems like this one, I glanced at some reviews. Some people seem to have absolutely loved it. So that might be the case for you. Whereas, yeah, I think some people like me either didn't finish it or they did finish it and weren't exactly wowed by it. So yeah, there you go. That one was a DNF for me. And then I read Dead Relatives by Lucy McKnight Hardy, which is a short story collection that just came out towards the end of last year. And I had read her debut novel, Water Shall Refuse Them, which I really, really enjoyed. So I was very much looking forward to reading more of her work. And yeah, this did not disappoint. It was excellent. A really marvellous collection. And the first story is the longest of the collection and my favourite. I just really, really loved it. In fact, I'll read the back of the book. It says, Iris has never left the big house in the country she shares with Mammy and the servants. When the ladies arrive, she finds that she must appease her dead relatives. Other stories in this collection explore themes of motherhood and the fragile body, family dynamics and small town tensions, unusual traditions and metamorphosis. There was really only one story that didn't kind of wow me. I think it was still a good story, don't get me wrong, but it just didn't have the impact that the rest of the stories in the collection did. I thought other than that one, they were all really excellent. I really enjoy her writing style, and yeah, hard to say too much about a short story collection, but the first story, which was my favourite, I think because it was a bit longer, so it had a bit more, you know, to like get stuck into. That one reminded me a little bit of We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson, which I love because it had this young main character and yeah, living in this kind of isolated large house, and there being some like weird stuff going on with the family. The story is very, very different, but just it had that little bit of a We Have Always Lived in the Castle vibe, which I really liked. And yeah, won't say where the story goes, but it was a really good one. It was dark and yeah, had some really great characters, and yeah, I really enjoyed the setting, and yeah, learning about this young character, Iris, and yeah, her dead relatives, amongst other things. She's really great at writing characters, really interesting characters, and yeah, lots of kind of eeriness and just unsettling things that play out in very different ways. You know, some of them are very like everyday normal situations and normal people, and then some are a bit more, there was definitely at least one that was like more of a speculative fiction type of scenario. But yeah, highly recommend this one. I thought it was wonderful, and yeah, so everything I've read by her I have enjoyed, so I am, yeah, keen to see what she does next. And then last up, I read a point horror book. This was Twins by Caroline B. Cooney, and this is about, yeah, twin sisters, Mary Lee and Madrigal, and they've always been very close, but one day their parents decide they're going to split them up, and Mary Lee is going to be sent off to a boarding school quite a distance away from where they live, whereas Madrigal is going to get to stay at home. And so we're following Mary Lee, and she's very distraught by this situation and being apart from her sister, who she loves very much, and yeah, is really struggling with being apart from her because they have such a strong connection, and this is now being like ripped apart. And then something happens, which, yeah, I don't know if it was like made clear by the synopsis, so I don't want to spoil it in case it wasn't, but something happens that kind of really changes things, and yeah, I thought it was great. Caroline B. Cooney's work is sometimes kind of odd, like there's this kind of off-kilter quality to her stories, and yeah, this one really worked for me. It was like just the right amount of strange for me. It kind of almost has a bit of like a dream-like quality, you know, like it's not really the real world, it's everything's a bit off. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant, and yeah, there's a character that's introduced partway through that was just super weird and does some weird things, and yeah, there's kind of a darkness to the story, and yeah, I think this isn't going to be everyone's favourite because the way that she writes these characters, like they don't really act like normal people would, so if you can get on board with that, then you'll have a good time with it, but if not, it probably isn't going to work for you. But yeah, I thought this one was great, really good fun and weird, and I enjoyed it quite a bit. So that was everything I read in January, an excellent reading month. Apart from the DNF, everything was 4 stars, so yeah, that was a great way to start the year off with lots of good books. So yeah, do let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts on them. Let me know what you have been reading in January, if there's anything that particularly stood out to you one way or another. I would love to hear about it. I hope you are all doing well. We've had a lot of snow here recently, so yeah, I spent the morning shoveling snow, hence my kind of hat hair situation going on here, but I was like, it's fine, let's just go with it. So yeah, hope you're all staying safe and warm. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!